Hi, I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. So one of the cool things that we got to see with Jedi Fallen Order is, in canon, what Kashyyyk was like under the Empire. Now, we got to see a little bit of this in the Aftermath trilogy, but really getting to see it on screen, visually, was intriguing. And I thought now's a good time to compare Kashyyyk during the Empire in Legends and Kashyyyk during the Empire in canon. In a lot of ways, they're different, and in a lot of ways, they're the same. So let's start with Legends. So immediately following the Battle of Kashyyyk, the planet was secured by clone troopers. Now, we see them patrolling on ATRTs, hunting for surviving Wookiees. It appears as though Wookiees that tried to defend the Jedi were hunted. The implications of later events seem to show that this wasn't all Wookiees being hunted, but just a few small groups. One of the things that kind of leads to this is that the Wookiees would stage a full-scale uprising against the small occupation force left on their planet several years later. An uprising that was abruptly put down by the 212th. Following that uprising, the planet was once again placed under surveillance by the Empire. The planet would once again be the site of an uprising when a survivor of Order 66 is discovered there. Vader takes the 501st and launches a full-scale assault against the Wookiee village that is housing this surviving Jedi. After engaging the surviving Jedi in combat and defeating him, he discovers that the surviving Jedi had a child. This child would be raised to be Starkiller, the main character of the Force Unleashed games. Following this particular uprising, Kashyyyk was then heavily subjugated by the Empire. The Empire took advice from the Trandoshians and started using the Wookiees for slave labor. It is around this time that Kashyyyk was stripped of its name and named Imperial Wookiee Planet C. The Wookiees were transported off-planet and used for labor to build things like the Death Star. There would be another uprising, which is depicted in The Force Unleashed. This one only a few years before the events of A New Hope. This one would see the Wookiees rising up and attempting to escape the planet before they could be shipped off to be used for slave labor. Ultimately, Legends depicts Kashyyyk as a rebellious planet punished by the Empire. A planet that was generally left on its own until it became the site of constant uprisings and resistance movements. And that's when the Empire clamped down on Kashyyyk. Canon is a slightly different story. In canon, immediately following the end of the Clone Wars, Kashyyyk was locked down and the Wookiees were sent into slavery. The planet blockaded, and the only ships going to and from the planet were slave ships. The Wookiees that remained on the planet were forced to cut down their Rorschire trees for lumber and farm food for the Imperial military. Over the course of the Imperial occupation, several resistance movements would crop up and be quickly quashed, culminating in a near-constant state of civil war on the planet. This explains how there's such a large resistance movement already in place on the planet by the time of Jedi Fallen Order, which is relatively early in the Empire's reign. Generally, a lot more changes in Kashyyyk's timeline in Legends than in canon. Not much has been put into that period on Kashyyyk in canon yet. Where Legends would detail the 3 or 4 major uprisings, we only know about 1 or 2 in canon. And both of those are fairly early in the reign of the Empire. It would seem like later, when the Empire stripped Kashyyyk of its name and gave it a much harder name to remember when it's just a series of letters and numbers, that the planet had already pretty much been subjugated into submission. Just like in Legends, in canon the Wookiees were sent off for slave labor, both in the spice mines on Kessel and for work on major Imperial projects like the Death Star. They were also generally sold to other species which found use for them, whether it's the Trandoshians using them for hunting, or other species using them for slave labor. In canon, Kashyyyk would eventually be liberated by a small contingent of Wookiees led by Han Solo and Chewbacca near the end of the Galactic Civil War. So both of these are very different, and I don't necessarily have a preference. I do think Legends is a little bit more gray, where canon paints the Empire as they took over and they're instituting slavery and they're clamping down on the planet for seemingly no reason. Legends depicts the Empire kind of getting done what they need to do and then generally pulling out and only coming back when the Wookiees are rising up. And after 2 or 3 uprisings, then they clamp down. That seems to make more sense. It doesn't seem to just be being evil for the sake of being evil. Not, by the way, supporting the Empire's treatment of Kashyyyk in Legends or canon, obviously. But just kind of intriguing to see the differences and the similarities. A lot of things have stayed relatively the same in both Legends and Canon, Kashyyyk is a very hard planet to suppress. Its people don't want to be subjugated by the Empire, just like they didn't want to be subjects of the Confederacy of Independent Systems during the Clone Wars. It makes a very interesting setting for things like Jedi Fallen Order and The Force Unleashed. So if you liked what you saw here today, or you just want more sci-fi discussions, head down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. And don't forget to leave a like and a comment. Tell me what you prefer. Do you like the canon story of Kashyyyk or the Legends story of Kashyyyk? I personally lean slightly toward Legends, but I think they're both very good. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.